What's up, guys? Welcome back to Econics. So I want to talk about in more depth and about reshaping my view on finances. So I kind of briefly touched on this and when I talked about leverage in my situation, but I really want to dive deeper into actually how I was able to change my view on finances. So first things first, I was actually given a book, and a lot of people have read this book. It's a very popular book. It's called Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and it's written by a guy named Robert Kiyosaki. I believe it's his last name. If not, I'll post a link below. So Rich Dad, Poor Dad was a very simple book. Rich Dad, Poor Dad explained finances in a very simplistic way that wasn't dense. So a lot of times you pick up textbooks that talk about money and talk about finances. They can be very intimidating because of the language that they use. It uses jargon that's not as easily to comprehend, and it's hard to read actually. But Rich Dad Poor Dad, it talked about assets and liabilities and spending habits, and so just a couple of things I want to touch on. So from personal experience, so one of my mentors, when I opened up my first credit card, I think my limit was like $1,500 on it. It was right when I graduated, and the first thing he told me was, he says, Josh, be careful with this credit card. Don't take it out, because when you're at the bar or when you're going out with your friends and you have it on you, you're more susceptible to use it. Well, I didn't listen. I didn't listen. So within like 6 or 7 months, my credit card was maxed out. I always made on-time payments, but I was still living beyond my means. I was over leveraging myself because I wasn't willing to sacrifice. So I was going home, on the weekends I would go out, whether it was on dates or whatever, I didn't care. I would just spend the money. Again, I would always pay more than the minimum on my credit cards, but I would always spend the same amount every month. So I was never actually cutting the credit card down. I was just pretty much had this amount and I would spend over it, and had that amount I would spend over. So crazy enough, my bank actually increased my limit because I was never past due. I always paid it. They probably loved me because I always spent my money. From there, they increased my limit, and then Christmas time came around, and I didn't know I had an increase, and I just happened to check, and I'm like, wow, I got like a $500 increase. So from there, I maxed out again on Christmas presents for my family, and they were trying to figure out how I got all this money, and I didn't tell them I spent it all on credit, but I didn't understand, that eventually I was going to have to pay this back. So one of the things that I did, and again, I talk about sacrifice a lot because in order to get where you want to be, you got to make some sacrifices. So once I started reading this book, I started to actually focus on my finances and being more intentional. So when you talk about being more intentional, you have to have the intent on actually completing something. So it's like doing something on purpose. So when you go home, for example, when you want to learn how to tie your shoes, you have to be intent on actually learning how to tie your shoes. Or if you want to budget properly, you have to be intentional about budgeting properly. You have to actually be conscious about it. So you have to be conscious about it until it becomes a pattern and it becomes a habit. Then it's subconscious that you're already thinking, save this money or don't spend that because that's not a good move. So once I started to actually reshape my view, and all I did was just started to read books on finances, and that really helped, kind of push me in the right direction. So one of the biggest sacrifices I made was during income tax time. I was like, man, I do not want to do this, but I understood that this is one of the sacrifices that I was going to have to make. So eventually income tax time came, and I got a good amount of money back. So with that amount of money, I was able to just pay off my credit card. The logic I used was, I'm paying interest on this credit card. Now I could very well just take that income tax money and spend it on whatever, or I could pay off my credit card. That way I could actually start saving double what I was saving at the time sooner. It could just speed up that process. So within like a month or two, actually 2 or 3 months, I was able to start really saving. So I want you guys to understand that when you want to become, talking about investing and talking about, building better spending habits, you actually have to be intentional about it until you build that habit, until you build that lifestyle of actually saving. So If you have any questions on, in depth about, how to reshape and just rebuild your mentality on what finances are and how to spend money and just doing a budget, reach out to me, inbox me, shoot me a DM, whatever you gotta do, email me. I'll have all my contact information below. Y'all have a good day. Peace.